We're going to go over the June 2025 forms release from C.A.R. If you don't know, every or twice a year essentially, C.A.R makes updates to the forms. We get new forms, we get revisions to old forms. I was invited to, um, in quote, big broker session with them, which was last week. That's actually the first time I've been invited to that. So basically, they have got C.A.R leadership and who sits there and does these revisions essentially. And so they give a chance for some of the brokers in California to kind of pipe in, give feedback. What are they seeing in the industry? What kind of complaints are they getting? What kind of problems are arising from current forms? And then they take that feedback and then they make note of it and get with their legal department and all of that stuff, and then we get forms revisions. So it wasn't a long meeting. They mostly went over the RPA changes. That was a pretty big topic, and I'll get into that a little bit. There wasn't a lot of changes, but one of them in specific is one that we definitely want to review. So before we get started with that, we have Gary with Tried and True Home Loans. Good morning, Gary. How's it going?
Going good, Travis. Thanks, guys, for being on the meeting this morning, June 30th. Quick refresher. My name is Gary McDonald. I'm with Tried and True Home Loans, which is basically the sister company of Rise Realty. And to find us, you just go into the agent back office, and here we are, Tried and True Home Loans. Just click on that, and there's a whole bunch of loan officers in there that can help you with your pre-approvals and all that good. Oh, I'm not sharing, am I?
No, I unshared mine, so
Oh,
just in
yeah.
case you're
All
running into an issue.
right. Can you see the online resource center?
Now we can. Yep.
All right, yeah. Sorry, it's Monday morning.
Yeah.
Still waking up. All right, so this is how to find us, Tried and True Home Loans. And then just a quick heads up, some of you may not have joined the Facebook group yet. We have a Rise Realty Networking and Insights Facebook group, so make sure to sign up for that too. So then you can get all the posts that Travis can put out during the week, and then you also get the link to the Monday team meeting. So that's that. Anyway, back to my PowerPoint meeting 6:30, 2025. So this week I'm looking at the 30-year fixed rate conventional, and we're down about an eighth of a point from last week, which won't make much of a difference. But sometimes buyers don't need much to get motivated. So hopefully these kind of trends do get some activity going. So last week we were around 6 7/8, and now we're basically just a smidges under 6 3/4 on the 30-year fixed conventional. FHA following the same kind of track, we're down about an eighth of a point. So around 6 1/4, just under on a 30-year FHA. And then VA is following the FHA pretty darn closely, just a little bit under 6 1/4%. So this is where we're at right now, 6 3/4 down to 6 1/4, depending on your loan program. And we do have others available too. So if your clients don't fit into these, then we do have other programs, especially on the non-QM side. So you have the bank statement loans for the self-employed. We have DSCR for investors. We have the asset depletion for people whose income isn't very high, but they have a lot of reasonably liquid assets. So there's a whole bunch of different things. So if you do get a buyer and you're not sure if they'll qualify or not, please reach out to one of us at Tried and True, and we'll do our best to get them into a loan. So anyway, today is June 30th, 2025. So what's so important about today? Well, it's the last day, excuse me, it's the last day of the first half of 2025. So it kind of gives us an opportunity to reflect on how things have gone in the first half and gives us a chance to regroup and see if we can kind of make the second half a little bit better for most of us, I'm guessing, because it's been quite a slow year so far, I think, for most of us. So I did put a few things together that we can kind of look at and see if there are things that we can do to make the second half better. So second half strategy, I don't know what's going on with my voice, but hey. So number one, review and reset the goals. So hopefully at the start of the year, you did have goals set for the year, hopefully written down, and you can go back and look over those and review and revise. Are you on track for your goals from January? Based on the market, maybe adjust your targets up or down based on your current situation. I know that rates haven't helped, and I don't know what past month, 6 weeks, the market's gone really slow on the buying side, and that's not based on the rates, because the rates, like I've been showing you each week, are pretty steady. But it has gone a little bit slow. And then you can kind of revise your numbers for listings, buyers that you work with, and close transactions. So this is number one. Number two, reconnect with your database. Call or text your past clients, prospects, and sphere contacts, even just to check in. You know, you can use this as a good point to say, hey, it's the end of the first half of 2025, and I'm just calling to check in and see how things are going and how I can help. I don't know what's going on with my voice, but anyways, sorry about that. Or, you know, so send a mid-year market update or personalized reports on their properties and stuff. And re-engage with cold leads, you know. If they were planning on doing something this year, again, you can follow up and say, hey, half of the year has gone already. We need to get moving. So that might give them a bit of a jolt as well and get them going. Number three, you can focus on listings. I mean, the saying is list to last. And so if you can get any listings in, it's normally a long-term game, but if you can find someone who's looking to list right now, it's actually a shorter-term game than usually working with a buyer, because even if a buyer is active, it can take quite a while for them to find the right place. So maybe listings can help. So refine your listing presentation. In fact, I was going to do that this morning, and then I realized it was June 30th. I thought, well, this would be a good time to do this. So on the next meeting I'm doing, I'll kind of talk a little bit about the listing presentation and give you some pointers and maybe help you on that one. And then if you have any credentials like certified listing expert, and I'm going to go over that in one of the meetings too. So if you have any questions about this in the meantime, you can reach out to me. I'll have my contact information at the end of the meeting, well, my presentation. And then get every buyer pre-approved. There's no point wasting your time and going around paying $5 a gallon for gasoline to find out that they aren't pre-approved and they can't buy. So reach out to one of the loan officers that tried and true, and we can help you get them pre-approved and make sure that your time is used constructively. Educate the buyers on the rate trends. You know, this is why I'm on here on the Monday mornings to kind of show you where rates are going. But if you do need something specific, again, reach out. And then stay alert to changes in the credit guidelines and loan limits. Loan limits usually varies each year. You know, the FHA comes out with the different ones each year around January. But again, any questions, reach out. And then level up your marketing, refresh any listing photos, look at your bios and social content and see if that needs to be tweaks a bit. If things are a little bit slow working with clients, this gives you time to kind of look at your social content and all that good stuff. And then run a campaign. Again, try and get the buyers and sellers who are thinking about doing something this year, have them look at this and say, hey, half the year's gone. It's time to get moving, because by September time, things are going to start to slow down again. So you can do some campaigns, maybe look at doing more video. I mean, there's a lot of people now on YouTube and Vimeo and BombBomb. You can send out email videos to people concerning market updates, buyer tips, behind the scene tours of homes and stuff. So look at that too. Strengthen agent relationships. So if you can team up with agents in a different market area who don't work your area, you can kind of exchange referrals with them. Work on yourself, attend trainings, masterminds, or real estate mixers to grow your network. And then talk with Travis about what tools or leads that Rise has that you are not using yet. I mean, we do have quite a few tools. I think was it last week that Whisper was on? I don't know if you guys signed up for that. We had about a month ago, Soul.com was on. So those are two which are free to sign up for. And we have a whole bunch of different business packages with lead generation and stuff. So maybe reach out to Travis and see what you can do with that. And then keep up to date on the numbers. Study the MLS weekly on the price reductions, days on market trends, and all that kind of stuff. So that when you are talking to buyers and sellers, you are coming across as an expert, and you know all the latest and greatest as regards to numbers, what the inventory and rates. It shapes how you advise the clients, and then track your own KPIs, known performance indicators. So that's like appointments set, the offers written, and listings taken. But you can also look at numbers like how many conversations you're having, how many of those conversations get into appointments, and how many of those appointments are actually a client that you actually work with, either on the buying side or the listing side. And then, like I was saying earlier, sharpen your skills, work on yourself. You got this time now to take a course on negotiations, digital marketing, niche investing, etc., and practice scripts. Again, I'm going to go over the listing presentation at some point, so that's going to be one of the scripts, but you can also do it for the buying side. Join a coaching program or accountability group for support. So there's lots of things that we can do in the second half of the year to get better, and hopefully have a better second half than was probably been going on in the first half. So anyway, if you do have any questions about this, or need any thoughts on things going on as regards marketing and studies and things of that nature, then reach out to me. You don't need to restart, you just need to refocus. And if your clients do need financing guidance, reach out to a loan officer at Tried and True Home Loans, and hopefully we can all finish the year strong. So if you do need to reach out to me, this is my contact information. You can scan the QR code to put my contact information in your phone, or you can write it down old school and reach out to me, and I'd love to help. And Travis, that's all I got for this week.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. And yeah, it's a good time to kind of reassess what you have going on, what's been working for the year, what hasn't been working. Are you on track for your goals? I know a lot of you are. Some others, maybe not so much, depending on the market area that you're in. But Yeah, it's a good time to do that. And then as far as improvements, I always encourage everybody to look at YouTube as well. I mean, there is so much information on YouTube that while it may not show you exactly how you want to get something implemented, it'll at least get a lot of ideas going on things that are going to fit into your business to grow your business. So yeah, I always encourage, search around. There's tons of stuff out there. So. All right, let's go ahead. Um,
I
hey,
still,
Gary, do you want to unshare real quick?
last time you did it yourself somehow. How do I do it? Do I just,
Oh, there you go.
okay.
All right. So I'm gonna flip around a little bit because I'm gonna go with the forms that they provided directly. Now, some of them, for some reason, the link isn't working on the C.A.R site, so I'm gonna go over to the Zip Forms account and do that. But before I do, I took a couple screenshots from the big broker meeting that I went to last week. Um, so basically, this was kind of their first slide. Um, the forms have been released. They are in your Zip Forms account. So if you have a file going for a client currently who maybe is not in escrow yet, maybe it's a listing or something like that, you may need to refresh some forms in there. Or if you have a buyer client that you've been writing offers with, kind of passively or whatever, you're going to need to delete that old RPA and put in the new one to make sure you have the newest version. Um, with this rollout, there was 94 forms in total, 11 new, 32 revised, 11 revised conforming only, 34 reviewed, and they got rid of a few because they renamed them or just incorporated them into others. We'll start off with the purchase agreement. The link that they had that shows all the red changes is not working. I think it's probably because they uploaded it already into the forms library for us. But I guess the most notable change, or one of the most notable changes, is on G3, where we ask for our compensation as a buyer's agent. Now, you can see previously that it said, and these are the lined out from the previous version, that we'd be asking for an amount towards the obligation of buyer to compensate buyer's broker. And then the next part down that really got missed quite often, or really, was hard to understand like how that whole flow worked, was the buyer affirmatively represents that at the time of this offer is made, buyer had a written agreement with the buyer's broker that, covered the property. And we have gone over that a few times about, how does your BRBC or your PSRA, how is it valid? How, what are the components to that? So we've gone over that. Nothing's changed there. But the biggest change is now they're saying seller agrees to pay buyer's broker. So they essentially simplified it, and there is no more affirmation. So what does that mean? Do you, as a buyer's agent, need to provide a copy of your BRBC to the listing side? No, you do not. If you're on the listing side, do you need to ask for a copy of the BRBC to, confirm the amount? And the answer is again, no. So you do not need to do that any longer if you are working with the new listing agreement and the new purchase agreement, because they changed language in both of those to reflect this change. Um, so, that may not mean a lot to everybody because we just kind of, tend to throw in what we're asking for right there, but there is no more affirmation now. So it's kind of taken, I guess, that burden off the listing agent and I guess a little bit from the buyer themselves, um, stating that you have this valid enforceable agreement in place. So, and their reasoning why, or part of the reason why, is when they were reviewing the NAR settlement, there was nothing stated in there from NAR stating that who's going to police this, and it shouldn't have been the listing agents, or they make no mention of the listing agents making sure that, the buyer rep agreement is in place and enforceable, because now, that was technically putting the listing agents in a predicament where, are they practicing law? Are they determining if this is a valid agreement or not, and then proceeding? So um, that's done. No more affirmation part of it. It just says seller agrees to pay buyer's broker. So I'm a fan of it. I think it should have been that way before. And also, they updated some paragraphs pertaining to 3G, and you can see what the changes are. The amount of compensation, if percentage, will be based on the final purchase price. Okay. Buyers advise that buyer's broker should not receive compensation from any source in excess of the amount in the buyer rep agreement. So that's a little reminder for us. We cannot receive more than what you have in the buyer rep agreement. That's why, it's been, I guess, recommended, and why we see buyer's agents coming in at a higher amount usually, or what maybe wasn't, I'll call it customary in quotes, and there is no customary, but um, so, and the other one is broker compensation down in section 19 of the RPA. Again, they added a little bit of verbiage in here. Buyer's obligation to pay buyer's broker shall be offset by any amount the seller pays buyer broker. Um, so these are just some of the little things they added into that. So I'm going to switch over. If you can't see my screen, let me know, but I believe we should be able to see it. And I'm going to go through, I am not going through all 90 of these changes or however many there were. I'm going to go over some of the more commonly used forms. And, I would encourage you to, get onto the CAR site, and up in the little search bar, you can just type in June 2025, and actually the first two articles that come up right there are essentially this page that I'm showing you right now, that you can review things. And there's also another one, which is a summary, which is what I'm using right now. Um, that gives you the most notable changes, if any, to some of the most common forms you're using. So let's go ahead and look at the addendum. If you cannot see my screen, can you throw that in chat? But I think maybe open up the chat real quick. Okay, so you should be able to see addendum on the page right now. So they kind of changed some things around with this, and they added a new addendum for us. Um, the changes here, and actually on a lot of forms, is they added housing provider, which is going to be your owner, your landlord. So that was added to a lot of forms, and I'm not going to go over that, but you can see right there what they did. So addendum one. Now this gets used for essentially everything, and it's actually not always the correct form to use, because an addendum is not an amendment. So we have to remember that. We did a webinar on that sometime last year about the differences between the addendum and the amendment. The amendment is amending the contract. So if you have anything that changes in the contract, such as the purchase price, after you have gone through your request for repairs and renegotiated a new price, you would use an amendment, not an addendum, because you're amending the contract. If there's going to be a credit, if there's going to be, now the seller is going to be, providing this or that. So any contract change, essentially, you should be using that amendment, not the addendum. The addendum is an addition to a form that you're using, because maybe you run out of space or something like that. So it is not supposed to make changes uh, in the already agreed to contract that you have. So this is essentially the addendum that we've all been using. No name change, anything like that, but you can see that this form is intended to be used in buyer, seller, or tenant housing provider transactions. For all other situations requiring an addendum, use addendum generic. And that's a new form they added, which is ADM-GEN. So a change or addition. Now, something I've noticed that they did on quite a few forms is they are providing a little bit of information on how to use this form now. On a lot of other forms as well. They're like, use this form for. So that's kind of nice that they're getting a little better about that. So a change or addition to a previously provided seller property questionnaire or TDS or other disclosure may be made on an amendment prior disclosure, which is a new form as well. It's called the APD, and it may give a buyer a right to rescind. So you're not going to use this to make an amendment for any changes to anything that has been disclosed, specifically your TDS and your SPQ. This to change the terms of an already executed agreement, use amendment to existing agreement. That's the AEA. That's the amendment. So this form, basically, in short, is stating that you're going to use this probably a little less, essentially. So you're using it almost like the TOA in a sense. So they've created two other forms, well, essentially one other form, and they're directing you for contract changes, use the AEA, which is the proper form to use. So that is the addendum. Let me see. I think I need to move some windows around. Okay. Next up, we will look at the addendum generic. So this is the new form that they added. There's no red marks on it because it's new. So it says, if the principals intend to modify the compensation previously agreed in a listing or buyer representation agreement, use modification of terms. So there are two different modification of terms. You're going to use the modification, the MTLA, that is for any modification to a listing agreement, which could be, extending the term of it, list price changes, commission changes, really anything that you're modifying, you will use the modification of terms LA. If it's a buyer rep agreement, you're going to use MTBR. Otherwise, if you need to make an addendum to listing agreement or buyer rep, or also they have a team agreement in here. So if you're starting a team, they actually have a team agreement in here. Then this is what you're going to be looking at. So next up, assumed financing addendum. Let's see if this one pops up, AFA. So there has been a few of you doing assumable loans, purchases with assumable loans in it, and we have an addendum for that. So the good thing about this one is the seller's advised to carefully investigate the substitution of eligibility along with proper documentation to determine whether the seller would be able to obtain another VA loan prior to the assumed loan being paid off. So there is a disclosure in here now for the seller of a VA loan who is offering an assumption, basically letting them know that, hey, if you let someone assume your VA loan, there is a high probability that you may not be able to use it for a future purchase. So that's good. And then they also made it contingent. So make the purchase contingent upon the buyer being able to obtain the assumable financing. So if you are doing one of those deals, and I know they're a little bit rare, but I've seen more this year than I've ever seen in my career, of people utilizing assumable loan purchases. So be sure to add in this one. This is the AFA, Assumed Financing Addendum. APD. So this one here is a new form. So this is what you're going to use if you're making an amendment to a TDS or an SPQ or anything else that is disclosed. Could be the FHDS or anything. So you're not going to use the amendment, you're not going to use AEA, and you're not going to use the addendum, either one of them. You're going to use the amendment to prior disclosure. So if you have disclosed already to the buyer, or if you're on the buyer side and you have received disclosures and the seller is making some sort of amendment because whatever, they had a water leak, something else came up, they forgot about something, whatever, you're going to use this form now to make that amendment. And something that they put in here, down here in the bottom, you can see in the red, an amendment to a seller property questionnaire, so SPQ or TDS may give a buyer a statutory or contractual right to rescind or cancel the contract. So they put in some language down here as well. So keep that one in mind. What do we have next? I didn't actually look at this one, the ASA. They said they reformatted it, which would be pretty good. Oh yeah. So if you have a third person on the transaction, we only have signature lines for one or two, either buyers or sellers or RPOs or, tenants. And you need to add a third one, you're going to use the additional signature addendum. A couple changes on this one. It's reformatted to include bundled forms, which is nice, when agreeing to a purchase, listing, or buyer rep. Refers to separate form for liquidated damages and arbitration. So looks like we can add up to 4 more people now. So you're going to check the forms being signed, purchase, listing, buyer rep, rental, or disclosure statements. And you can also type in some others. And then everybody's going to sign down here at the bottom. So I haven't used it personally yet. It just came out. So this may be a little more simpler than what we had before as the additional signature addendum. That was a little bit confusing. So hopefully it looks like they're kind of going with the grid format a little bit on this and trying to simplify it for us. And again, if you guys have any questions, just pop into the chat. I mean, nothing groundbreaking at the moment. We have the BCA. So this is the broker compensation advisory. So this is bundled in with the RPA, actually with the BRBCs. So don't break this out, and the changes here, pursuant to January 1st, new law, California, all licensees must have a buyer representation agreement as soon as practical upon acting as the buyer's agent, and it must include the amount of compensation, services to be rendered when compensation is due, and the contract termination, which may not exceed 3 months. So this is 2B of the BCA. This is, in my opinion, a tool to help you, with your upcoming clients, your upcoming buyer clients, so that they know that this is something that needs to be done, and most of the public seems to be okay with it, all, at this point. It's been, quite a while since the NAR settlement came out. Most people are used to it, but again, you can point to that section there. They also added right here, a buyer's broker is not permitted to receive compensation for services from whatever source that is greater than the amount in the buyer rep. And then by signing below, seller buyer acknowledge they have received copy of this buyer compensation. And they have read and understand its terms. So they're just adding in some little things here and there, I think, to try and be more transparent and also protect us as well. BRBC, let's see if this one comes up. Okay. So nothing groundbreaking here. We've got added language to remind brokers of limiting compensation to amount specified in the agreement. And we have A1 right here, not to exceed 3 months unless buyer is a corporation, LLC, so on and so forth. This is a big one. Be sure you don't make your representation period longer than 3 months. That could nullify it. And we have had some issues with that already, where agents have actually lost commission. And that stemmed from other things, but this was part of it. And these dates need to be the day of or prior to touring the property if it's a single family 1 to 4 unit, because that is the NAR rule. See if we have anything else in here. Payments received. They added this in here as well. It's kind of redundant with the BCA, but they're just stating that we can't earn any more than what was in the buyer rep. And really, that's about it. So nothing super groundbreaking there, which is nice. I feel like this forms rollout wasn't too, um, I don't want to say significant because there was significant changes, but we didn't have a lot of new groundbreaking things. I think that this one is probably the biggest, which is the FHDS. Not my favorite form. So yeah, this is one of the ones that won't let me. So let me go. I do have it pulled up here in zip forms. Hopefully you can see my screen right here. It says fire hardening and defensible space disclosure and addendum. This is the one we're reviewing right now. And someone just posted in a question, I received a BRBC blank, but signed by the buyer. Does this matter? Yes, that is an unenforceable BRBC. If they are using the new listing agreement or the new RPA as a listing agent, we don't have to affirm these anymore. But that particular buyer's agent is out of compliance and he does not have a valid BRBC in place right now. Technically, they would lose their commission, or they're in jeopardy of it. So fire hardening, and defensible space disclosure, the FHDS. So we can't see some of the stuff that they changed, but we're going to go ahead and look at the form. The biggest thing I like right here, and they put it a little bit more front and center, I think, is fire hardening disclosure. Property is built on or after January 1st, 2010. If that is true, if the property you are listing or if you are representing a buyer on a listing, on a sale, we technically don't need this if the property is built on, I mean, they don't have to fill this out, is what I'm saying. Property is built on or after January 1st, 2010. Paragraphs 2B and 2DC and 2C do not have to be completed. So here's 2B and here's 2C. And if you remember last week, I talked about one of the additions to the FHDS is going to be the requirement for a seller to provide 12 low-cost retrofits for fire hardening. And I wasn't sure if we were getting a new form or what we were getting. So luckily, oh, there is no form showing. No, sure isn't. Okay, should be able to see it now. So I was referring to section 2 right here. Check the box if you're representing your seller client. If their home was built January 1st, 2010 or later, they don't have to fill out 2B or 2C right here. These really did not change. The fire hardening involved areas, are you seller aware of? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yes or no? they incorporated the list of 10, or sorry, 12 low-cost retrofits into this agreement. So again, I went over this last week. I can go a little bit more in depth on this on, probably a future meeting or something else, but essentially they're just going to look through here, and this isn't the disclosure part necessarily. This is a have we done this? Yes or no, all the way through. They're not asking if you have problems with it, they're asking if you've done it. So they'll just go through here and tick them off essentially all the way down to 12, and that fulfills their requirement to list the low cost retrofits. And then section 3 now is essentially unchanged. Is local compliance required? Is or is not? And then you're going to do is or is not, and then who's going to be responsible for making sure the property is in compliance. So that is the form. They still attach the defensible space decision tree if you're using that. So again, this isn't my favorite form. I think it's a very difficult one for sellers to fill out properly, but this is what we have. So, and this is for high fire properties that are going to be built prior to January 1st, 2010. So where do you find that? We went over that last week. There is in the back office a link to the fire zones in there. So that's a good place to look. Also, the NHD report summary page is going to show you right there is or is not in a high fire severity zone. So let me stop that share. And guess we were here. FVAC. So the FVAC, let's see if we can click on it. Nope. Yeah, I go back over here again. Let me add that in. If it'll let me. Bear with me just 1 second. Like I said, I had to kind of click around a little bit here. I wish they would have left those links live. That would make things a lot easier to explain all these changes. So we have the FVAC. So the FVAC, if you're if the buyer is using FHA or VA financing, this is a requirement. We need to have this in the file, and actually a lender can't even finish out their origination. It won't, they can't fund the loan. They need this. So we need to have this in the file. The change here was they added an optional paragraph that the form is used when purchase price changes. So I see that quite often. This is what they added due to a modification in the price stated in a previous amendatory clause. This FHAVA amendatory clause reflects the current purchase price and supersedes any previous amendatory clause. So when you write your offer, you have a client who's using FHA or VA financing, you're going to put in the purchase price here. Actually, hopefully no, I'm not showing. Sorry. Okay. FBAC form. Here we go. Now you can see it. This is the paragraph I just stated right here, checkbox. But you're making your offer. You got an FHA or VA finance client. You're going to put in the purchase price here with this form. You're going to number it, number 1, and send it off. So let's say during the course of negotiations, you come to a different price, you will send a number 2. So this you would check here and say, price has been modified. This is now going to be number 2, and then the new price will be here. Or just say it's 800 or whatever. So that's how you do it if you're amending it. This could also happen after you do any, repair requests, negotiations and things like that. So, same form, but they just added this spot here that this is now a new one with the new price on it, because it does have to have the price you're going to close at essentially needs to be on here in the end. All right, what else do we have? A little bit of tenant stuff. If you're doing any leasing, let's stop that. Let's go back over here, and we have the move-in inspection. Yep, sorry. We want this one. Okay, so you should see the forms again. We're gonna do the move-in inspection. And we can't click that one either. That's really making things challenging for me. Hold on one sec. Sorry about this. So we're gonna screen share these forms now. And let me see if I can just add this straight in. So that's the MII, move-in inspection. Fortunately, I already have it added here, so. The biggest change on this move-in inspection is, and this was a law that changed the beginning of the year, if you remember, when we did that forms rollout, is there is a requirement now to have pictures on when they move in. So you want to do pictures move in, pictures move out, and all they did on this was put a reminder in there for you that pictures need to be on file, and you can throw them in your uh, email folder or however you store your stuff. But um, I don't know where they put that because I don't have the redlined version of this. But somewhere in here, there is a reminder to take pictures of the property. Exists. Housing provider, and that's essentially the owner. It's not saying the agent needs to do it, but housing provider shall take photographs of the unit immediately before or at the inception of the tenancy, and the photographs may be, but are not legally required to be attached to this move-in inspection. So here is your reminder to get those done if you're doing some leasing or, on either side. So that's the biggest one for there. Let's see. They have a update on the modification of terms for listing. Let's see if we can maybe, oops. Maybe we can grab that from here, MT listing. Nope, not working, of course. So let's go back. Sorry, like I said, they didn't make it easy, but snipping all of these is very, very time consuming. So I was hoping that we can just kind of blast through the links. Looks like we have a question in the chat. How long do we need to keep? Keep files? If it's keep files, it's going to be 3 years still. All forms, we're going to do MT. And we'll just grab this second one here because that should be the new one. Yep, listing agreement. Okay. Pull up this one. So hopefully you see, I don't know that I'm sharing the correct one. Okay, sorry about that. Modification of terms, you should be able to see it on your screen. What did they change on this? Clarify that extension begins on the date of the modification. And then that's really about it. So management approval. Let's see. Yep. So that's really all they changed on that was the clarify that extension begins on the date of the modification if you're going to be extending the listing. So says if listing agreement is an exclusive agreement regarding residential property involving 1 to 4, the renewal may not last longer than 12 months of the date of this modification. This restriction does not apply if principal is a corporation. If the renewal exceeds 12 months on a residential 1 to 4, this modification is void unless the owners are a corp or LLC. It is unlawful to record or file the listing agreement or a memorandum or notice thereof with the county reporter. So they added in some extra stuff there. Be sure you're not extending these more than 12 months. This probably is more relevant right now than in previous years because listings have been on the market a little longer. So don't exceed 12 months on your renewal. Otherwise, it'll make the agreement void, the whole listing agreement void. What else? The notice of broker involved properties. Well, let's see if we can get that pulled up. I don't know if you've ever used the notice of broker involved properties. We've actually had this come up even more lately because there's been, cancellations happening and different things like that. So let me grab that form real quick. Sorry, I'm trying to get through this as quick as I can. We're almost done with probably the most notable changes on everything. But I did want to go over this because they made a change on this one actually prior. And so if you're not familiar with canceling out a listing and how the continuation um, period works, you're going to want to read up on that. So, all right. So let me add this in here. So this might be about the last form we're doing. So you should be able to see the notice of broker involved properties. So when do you use this? If you have a listing that's getting canceled or maybe even expiring, and you want to protect your commission and you have filled out the continuation period part of the listing agreement, that's where, typically I see like 30 or 60 days put in there for the continuation period. That is not a continuation of the listing. That is a continuation for you to be compensated in the event one of the buyers has viewed this property or made an offer on this property um, after the listing is expired or canceled. So let's say, this I have a listing expiring today, and I have a list of 5 buyers that came through this property, and I want to give notice to the owner that, hey, these 5 people have come through this property. One of them as early as Saturday, but really it doesn't matter because they were in the timeline. Um, and you're going to use this form right here to notify them that um, that these people came through and you were the procuring cause and you were involved with them. And so therefore you could be due compensation from the sellers, even if they relist with another broker. So you'll want to provide this, and this has to be provided prior to the expiration or cancellation. It used to be before you would provide this within 3 days after, but now it has to be provided before. So you want to make sure that you get this put together before you have a cancellation if you feel like you're going to be due compensation. You're going to want to provide this to your client prior to it actually canceling or expiring. I think there was a question that had popped in. Let's see. So if a homeowner is using a property management company, is the housing provider the property management co or the property owner still? The RPO, a rental property owner, is the owner. Oh, you can't see the form? Maybe that was a previous form, so I think you can see this one. Okay. And let's see. I think we got two more here, and then we can. We have a couple more. So notice to seller to perform. They added an optional paragraph for delivery of documents for solar panels, balcony inspections. Added optional contingency for substitutive eligibility for assumption of VA loan. There's some additions to the notice to seller to perform. I'm not going to pull that one up. Probate advisory clarified the exemption for smoke alarms is for statement of compliance. Added paragraph about the need for the ESD form. The ESD is the exempt seller disclosure, and that's what you're going to use for a probate. That is in place of the TDS, so you will use the ESD instead. And so they just kind of put that front and center on the probate form. RLA, let's see if we can get to the redlined version of that, because that would be awesome. RLA. Nope. So what they added to the RLA, they have some additions on short sales. So they added a reference to a new form called the short sale listing addendum. That used to be a different form, and they removed that other form. Added a statement that seller's broker will not confirm compensation between buyer and buyer's broker. So that was the change they made because of the RPA G3. So they are putting in the listing agreement now too that, hey, we, the listing agent, listing broker, does not need to affirm anything or confirm essentially that the buyer has a valid buyer rep agreement with their agent. So they updated both forms because of that change. The following listing agreements were conformed. Oh, so they made that change to all of the different types of listing agreements because there's a few out there, but it's going to be on your land and your commercial and all of that as well. So that same change. And then with the RPA, again, there was nothing groundbreaking on the RPA. That was, I'm gonna go ahead and just stop that. The RPA was basically 3G was the biggest change there. That we don't have to verify anymore as listing agents. And then I showed you the two paragraphs they modified. And then they added language to conform to the changes of the FHDS form. So in the RPA, they're talking about the 12 retrofits that need to be provided to them as well, but that is on the FHDS form. Those are really the only major changes on the RPA. And then rental property owner advisory is a new form. Let's see if that one will pop up. Again, this is more tenant stuff. Also not coming up. So let me see if I can pull it up in zip real quick. Sorry, I'll try and wrap up here in about 10 minutes if you guys can hang out. So this is a new form. This is the RPOA. So if you're doing any leasing, then this is a form you'll want to take a look at. This form identifies areas for client to investigate, to determine risks of renting out property such as rent and eviction control, um, upkeep, security deposit, screening fees, insurance, and need to discuss with an attorney. So this is essentially they're advising rental property owners of, I guess, the pitfalls of being a landlord, essentially. So add this one in if you are going to be doing any lease listings. You're going to want to add this in to your lease listing agreement, um, along with whatever else you have. There's also the rental property owner intake form. That's the RPOI. Let's see if it'll let me add from here. Am I even showing this form? Don't look like it. Sorry. Be nice as if forms didn't open in a separate window. So this is the one I was just talking about, the RPOA. It's just an advisory. There's nothing to fill out. They just sign it. So you'll want to add that into your lease listing. The RPOI. Let's see if I can pull that up easily. RPOI. No. So on that one, that's the rental property intake, owner intake form. They added some questions about owner to help determine if exceptions apply to rent and eviction control, security deposit, and tenant credit reporting laws. So nothing groundbreaking there. Seller's advisory. So the SA form, that's bundled in with your residential listing agreement. What they added with that was a statement that the seller's broker will not confirm compensation between buyer and buyer's broker. So I mean, they're stating this multiple times now. We have a new form here, the SIPA, SIPA, Seller in Possession Advisory. This one's probably not bad. Let's see if I can add this in here. All right. Close that. Okay, should be able to see my screen. We have a seller in possession advisory. This is a new form. This form identifies areas for client to investigate to determine risks of seller continued possession, such as the possibility of creating a tenancy, extended possession, need for verification of condition and insurance, and advise parties to consult with an attorney. So if you're going to be doing an SIP, a seller in possession, you're going to add this one in as well. And this is an advisory to them on essentially the pros and cons of doing a seller in possession after close of escrow. So add this one in as you go. That's really about it. So, like I said, nothing real groundbreaking. Got a couple new ones that I think we're going to be using, such as this one, because we do see a lot of SIPs out there. Um, and then I guess if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. But really, not any real major changes, except for, the compensation, us not having to verify the GRBC anymore as listing agents. I think that's a good one. Um, Otherwise, they've got about 200 forms in the zip forms library. If you're wondering how to amend something or anything, they probably have a form for it. So check in there. I keep as up to date as possible. Obviously, there's 200 of these forms in there. I don't always know what the acronym is, but feel free to ask if you get stuck on anything like that. But that's really it. Like I said, nothing too crazy. Pay attention to the FHDS, pay attention to the RPA, and if you're doing leasing, there is some new forms there. So be sure you're adding those into your file and having everybody sign those. So um, hopefully that helped explain a little bit of what we're seeing new. Um, other than that, hope everybody has a great week. And give me a call if you need anything. We are not going to have a meeting next week due to the 4th of July holiday. Seems like the Monday after usually is kind of slow attendance. So we typically don't do the meetings after that. But we will be back the following week, same time, same place. So hope everybody has a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.